Hey guys, Bartell's Bookshelf here, just filming a quick video that's, again, probably going to be very rambly and unfocused, but I finished reading this book about 6 days ago, and I've been trying to get in the headspace to make a video on it, but I've been in the middle of so many other things, and I've had trouble articulating my thoughts, and all that, but it's going to keep nagging at me until I get it out, so I'm just going to talk about it, and you guys can make sense of it. So yeah, I've been getting back into Star Trek again. As anybody who knows me knows, I adore Star Trek. I've watched all of Voyager, Deep Space Nine, all of Enterprise. I've watched most of the original series. Currently working my way through Next Generation, and eventually I hope to watch all of the movies. I've seen a good chunk of them. And that's extended to the books. If you all remember, I went on a little bit of a splurge, and I bought way too many Star Trek books. I don't know why I thought I would be able to work through all of them in a reasonable amount of time, but things kind of fell off recently, in recent months, as they do with, hyper-focus things. If you ADHD people out there know, you have moments where you're incredibly hyper-focused on something and then you just forget about it a second later. But anyway, I was just really getting back into it and, rewatching some of my favorite clips from DS9, which is my favorite series. And I wanted to get back into the relaunch books. I read the beginning of the relaunch series, which was the first two volumes of Avatar by S.D. Perry, which I really enjoyed. And the one that I really wanted to get my hands on, and have never been able to find in paperback, is A Stitch in Time by Andrew J. Robinson, who's the actor who played Garrick in DS9, who is, of course, the best character in the show. I'd been holding out on getting an ebook copy because I was just hoping that I would maybe find a cheap deal somewhere, but it's probably not going to happen. This book goes for upwards of $100 to $150 or even more, depending on where you're buying it from. I don't know. I have no idea why it's so rare. It's probably one of the most rare Star Trek books that I know of. But I read a review of it recently. I've actually been keeping up with the Star Trek rewatches on Reactor from Keith R.A.D. Candido, who is a Star Trek author himself, and another writer, Alvaro Zenos Amaro, on Reactor, did their own reread of the Deep Space Nine relaunch series, which finished in 2021, and I read their review of A Stitch in Time, and it just sounded so good that I was like, alright, screw it. Rather than just moving on to the next book in the series, I will read the ebook of it, and I'm really glad I did, because it was a great book. I can't really go into specifics without kind of spoiling a lot of things about the show itself and where the characters end up, but if you've watched DS9, if you're any kind of fan of Star Trek, and of DS9 in particular, Garrick, the Cardassian Taylor, who is actually a former spy for the Obsidian Order. And this book came out of a journal that Andrew J. Robinson, the actor, kept throughout his time on the show as a way of kind of getting into the character. And as the show began to reach its end, he started thinking about turning it into a novel, and he talked with some of the editors at Pocket Books, and they did. They turned it into a book. And as far as I know, in all my research, this is the only Star Trek novel written but with an actor's name on it that was actually written by the actor, that wasn't ghost-written, which is really, really cool. And of course, you hear that and you think, ooh, gosh, what's that going to be like? But this actually shocked me. It was a great book. It moves along kind of three timelines. So the conceit of the book is that it's a letter being written to Dr. Bashir by Garrick. It jumps between contemporary diary entries of Garrick's time at DS9 and other places, which ties into various events that were happening on the show. Garrick's memoirs, starting from childhood to his training at this facility called Bamarin, which leads into his apprenticeship with Anabran Tain and working for the Obsidian Order, and then his eventual exile onto Terok Nor, which eventually became DS9. And then there are bits from the post-show where Garrick has returned to Cardassia Prime after the Dominion War and is talking about the rebuilding projects going on, cleaning up the rubble and the dead bodies from the horrible war. It's a very complex book. There's all these intersecting storylines. It's split into three parts. It's definitely not a plot-driven book. It's very much character-driven, which is one of the things that makes it kind of hard to talk about. It's not really about revealing any kind of crazy, twists or any kind of insane lore or anything like that. It's really kind of a Bildungsroman about, a coming of age of a young man, in absolute service to the state, sort of discovering the cracks that exist beneath the facade of this society that he's grown up in. And Andrew Robinson writes it with a surprising amount of poetry and clarity, and a lot of really surprising insights about the human condition in regards to patriotism, history, propaganda. There's a recurring theme in the story about masks. As Garrick is a spy and must frequently wear masks of some sort in his various guises, and it goes deeper into kind of the masks that we all wear as people, the different versions of ourselves that we present to society, and what is the truth of ourselves if everything that we present to society is some sort of facade or falsehood. I didn't expect a Star Trek tie-in novel to be so complex and poetic and to have so many varying themes. It's very tragic, obviously, as a lot of DS9 was. There's a lot of stuff, as I said, about the fallout of the Dominion War, about the rebuilding of Cardassia, and in that he even finds some insights about, there's a whole plot line about different factions of Cardassians who want to restore Cardassia in different ways. Some Cardassians want to bring back the old Cardassia, make Cardassia great again. And then there's people who want to bring in a more softer, democratic Cardassia to, kind of take inspiration from the Federation and things like that. And he finds a lot of insights about, demagoguery and how politicians use these sort of bright, shining lies to convince people to give them power and things like that, which is obviously very topical. Another aspect of it that I really liked was that we got a lot more insight into Cardassian society. We hear a lot about how it's run. With the training facility that I mentioned, how it's very stratified, almost like a caste system of sorts. There's a lot of stuff about the Aurelian Way, which is related to the people who came before the Cardassians, which is this old religion that's kind of suppressed. And one of the other things that really surprised me was that it doesn't shy away from Garrick's omnisexuality, as Andrew J. Robinson put it. That was his way of describing Garrick's view on relationships. And indeed, throughout the book, he does have some encounters with men that where he says that they're attractive and things like that. Of course, there is a main romantic interest in the book that is female, but it was 2000, and I imagine the pocketbooks editors and the higher ups were very much cracking down on any sort of explicit explorations of any kind of same-sex feelings. But still, the fact that it's there at all was really unexpected and surprising to me, and very pleasant surprise. So yeah, I mean, it was just again, like I can't really go into specifics because there's a lot going on. In fact, one of my, I don't know if it's really a criticism, but one of the things that people should probably be aware of going into this novel is that it's very labyrinthine. There's lots of, not only is there, the differing intersecting time periods, characters are all, because in the nature of, characters who are all about, spying and subterfuge, espionage, there's lots of code names within code names, lots of secrets being revealed, and and strategic lying, so it's a little bit hard in certain parts to keep straight of everything that's going on, especially when they kind of jump between using characters' code names and their real names. It can be a little hard to keep track of who's who. But it was a really fascinating book, and very surprisingly nuanced and dark and melancholy, but with as much like Garrick himself, with a big streak of sentimentality, which made it really it gives it this little bit of hope, that sort of lifts you out of the clouds of depression a little bit, which I think is a big part of Star Trek. You always have to have that little glimmer, On top of that, there's also just a lot of fun sort of cameos from other characters that were in Star Trek shows. Garrick runs into Gul Madred in the present portions of the book, and they go a little bit into what happened to him after the events of the Chain of Command two-parter in TNG. There's references to characters and events that happened on DS9. There's just a lot going on, and it's a really interesting book, and I'm not selling it well at all, but if you're at all interested in DS9 and in sort of furthering the story of DS9 and in reading something that kind of deepens the character of Garrick, written by the actor who played him, so he obviously is coming from a place of, knowledge and experience, I would highly recommend this. Unfortunately, you're probably going to have to stick with the ebook unless you get really lucky. I actually heard stories of people getting used copies at used bookstores for like 50 cents, which pisses me off. I would love to have a copy of this book, but that's kind of impossible at this point in time. But the ebook is out there, and also, actually, if you're into audiobooks, Andrew J. Robinson recently released the audiobook of A Stitch in Time with him doing the audio, so it's Garrick reading to you. So I can't imagine a more immersive way to experience the book. So yeah, if you're not familiar with DS9 or the character, it probably won't mean much to you. But if you love that show, and if you love that show's very particular sense of darkness and melancholy, and if you love the character of Garrick, you really owe it to yourself to check this out. I'm really glad I did, and I eagerly look forward to continuing more of the DS9 relaunch books. Next up is the Section 31 novel, Abyss, which I'm looking forward to, as I really like Section 31 and Dr. Bashir. So, by the way, I'm not the only person who interprets this book as a love letter to Bashir, which perhaps explains why Garrick is so willing to reveal some of the things that he reveals in the book, and I'll leave it at that. But yeah, until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.